Welcome to a long-awaited edition of All Over the Map. Yes, I'm back, and I told you that I knew some cool people, right? Here's another one featuring... Now, we're going by your author name today? What are we doing?
We'll go by author name.
Okay, author name, Lynn Else.
Yes, you got it.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So, we're doing things a little bit differently. Holding mics today, so that's more challenging for the guest.
All right, we got it. I think we got it.
But we're really excited to talk to you because you are an author, an independent private author that's written a few books now. So tell us a little bit about, how that even got started for you.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you. I'm super honored to be on here. Hi, all. I started out as an indie author, and I published my historical fiction, my Egypt books set in ancient Egypt around with King Tut's family. That I did independently. And then I started looking in the market for kind of a small market publisher. So I knew it's sometimes who you know. And I knew somebody who was published through a company in Houston. And they liked my kind of, I keep wanting to call it a script because we, theater major, that's where my mind goes first. But they liked my draft of Descendants of Avalon, which is about some teenagers who travel to the land of Avalon. They battle an evil wizard. They have to rescue a friend. They meet some people from King Arthur's time. And so that's when I got signed with Inklings Publishing. And so now I'm actually considered a hybrid author because I do indie and I do small market publishing. So,
wow.
So now I'm set to release my second book in the Avalon series. And I also have a novella that I self-published. It was something through our library, had kind of a Mary Shelley contest, so anything kind of Frankenstein related. So I twisted it kind of into a sci-fi thing because, as you know, I'm a ginormous nerd, and I'm not apologetic about it.
No,
and
not at all.
so this was my sci-fi thing. I used to watch a ton of Star Trek, and I was in a Star Trek writing club, so we wrote stories, and I had my own ship. I was captain, of course, so I got to set the missions, and then we all wrote stories, and so I've always had all these sci-fi things in my head. So I kind of did if there was a human zoo on an alien world and some of the secrets behind that. So that's my other novella I came out with recently. So
wow.
So yeah.
That's impressive. Okay, since you mentioned Star Trek, recently you had a pretty big thrill, right?
Yeah,
Tell us about that.
So I tell you what, I used to go to cons, nerd conventions we'll call them. I used to go to those. It's okay. Nerdy and proud. So I used to go to them when I was younger. My parents had a costume made for us and everything. I was a lieutenant commander. I had the little pips and everything. And my younger brother was the captain, but he also had his Vulcan ears that he'd put on. And so we've been going to cons all our life. And when we were a kid, I was more into Star Trek Next Gen. And my brother was more into the original series. And we used to get these autographs for free. You just have to listen, you'd listen to him talk, and then you'd run out and go get in line to get their autograph. Well, when William Shatner came, he actually cost money. And so my parents kind of chose, who would it mean more for? Well, it meant more for my little brother, so I didn't get William Shatner's autograph.
Now, when was this?
This was probably when I was in middle school.
Okay.
So this was a while ago. And so I found out that he was coming to the GalaxyCon a couple weekends ago here in Minneapolis. But I didn't really know anybody who, I found out now afterwards. There's like, oh, I wish you would have told me. I would have gone with you. Well, thanks. But someone who I know said, hey, I have a friend who is kind of working with the con. Did you want to go up? And I'm like, yes, William Shatner's there. So I paid for the autograph and got in line, and he was so nice. And I gave him my sci-fi novella as, just, here you go, you're in the biz, it's a gift for you. And yeah, he was very gracious, very nice. There was this adorable older lady in front of me. She didn't want an autograph. She just wanted to go up and say hi to William Shatner because she's been watching him since Star Trek and TJ Hooker, and she just wanted to shake his hand. It was so cute. So I got his autograph, and then, I kind of got out of that, and my friend and her friend kind of said, well, why don't you get a photo with him? And I'm like, well, I paid for the autograph, and that was expensive enough. So this is fine. I never got one. So now I have my autograph, and they're like, well, I know a guy, so let's just go get one. So then I got to go get a photo with Shatner, and that was like, I mean, I was not a huge original fan when I was younger because I wanted more female. Uhura was the best, but it was like I wanted more awesome females in it. But now you just respect him as just kind of this living legend whose career has been fantastic. He's hilarious. He has great sense of humor about himself, so just being able to meet him and just say, I said, thank you for coming to Minneapolis. That was really nice. And he was very gracious, said thank you back after we took a photo. And so yeah, it was pretty neat. I was very humbled by who he was, how he was with his fans. And so that was very, and I went very nerd girl afterwards. I was like, oh my gosh. So it was fun.
Well, and you would never guess how old he is by looking at him either.
No, not at all.
Surprised.
I was too. I mean, he seemed to be doing very well. He was very, conversational. And I mean, you have to sit there and smile for how many hours when you're taking photos with all your fans. So he had a lot of energy. So that was very surprising.
Yeah. Pretty cool. I saw the photos and was like, well, I'm pretty sure she's pretty excited about that.
Pretty excited, yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, you mentioned that. We'll transition to that since you brought it up, which is your books, your stories. I know that's been a really important theme for you. You wanted to focus on powerful women, right? And that's really what you were going for. So tell us about why that was.
Yeah. You read there are a lot of great books out there that are getting kids into reading again. Like Harry Potter's a huge example. But Harry Potter has one main female, and it's more male heavy. Most of the teachers are male. Most of the villains are male. And what really kind of triggered me to write my Avalon novel was, so I was watching Fantastic Beasts, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying anything wrong about the movie, but the two people who were having all the fun were the guys. And that got me a little bit upset because the girl was the main female protagonist, was the tattletale, kind of. And I was disappointed with that. So I was like, no, I want to write a story in which the females take the lead. The females are the quirky ones, or they're unsure of themselves. They can be smart, and they're just trying to figure out their place in the world too. So I really focus on, with my Avalon series, I'm focusing on 4 friends who are all very different. And, one of them has a secret she isn't sure if she can share with her friends because she doesn't know if they'll like her after they discover it. And others are just trying to get comfortable with who they are. They're in this magical land, and they're just they're ordinary girls. What do I have that would be as spectacular as magic and sword fighting? And that's kind of what this is about, is being proud of who you are and also embracing who you are and seeing it through different female characters who are leads. So that's my Avalon. I also am really interested in women from history, especially ancient history. Because in Egypt, you'd be surprised how many rights women had. They could testify in court. They could own land. If there was a divorce, they got the equal settlement instead of, they would lose everything, which you hear in some other societies. So I'm just really fascinated by their role in history, and I wanted to bring that to life in some of my other novels.
Wow. That is good. And some things that probably a lot of people didn't realize. So.
Yeah. I mean, you think of the ancient cultures, you usually think of Rome and Greece, and I find Rome to be the evil empire of the ancient world, but they did have some really good innovations. Right. I get that. But they weren't no ancient Egypt, so just saying.
How did you get started in writing? Like, were you as a kid, were you always writing? Was that something that you really loved to do?
I did enjoy it. At first I kind of started with some of those like Christopher Pike novels that were kind of the suspenseful ones. Me and my friends would try and write a few stories. And I don't think it really hit me how much I was writing until a friend gave me a birthday gift, and it was just a hardcover book where I could just write. It was just like its own book. She said, here, now you can write your own novel because I know you're always reading and you're always writing something. And I don't think it really hit me then. And so then I started getting into more writing clubs. Like I said, the Star Trek one where we created our own missions and we had our own characters. And that's where I kind of got into the character development too, was, finding out this character who I could be in this world and what different challenges she'd go through with the different, Star Trek things that would happen in space. So yeah, I've been doing it a while. I
mean, I know you read a lot, but
I do read a lot.
There's a big transition from reading a book to writing a book, because the process of writing. Tell us a little bit about that. What is your process like for writing?
So as we talked about yesterday, it's National Novel Writing Month. which is NaNoWriMo. And the goal is to write 2,000 words a day. Kind of a challenge. I'm kind of failing this year, which is okay. It usually takes me about a year to kind of finish a novel. Most of the novels here that I wrote my my second Egypt was done during Nano. And then my first Avalon, and then the second one was mostly completed during Nano, because it's just kind of that kick in the pants to get going. You have that community who encourage you, and they have all these little sprints to kind of get you going, or little writing prompts. So usually I'll get that first draft done, and then when you start reading it through, you're like, what was I saying there? I'm missing words, so there's that whole reread and going through, making sure you kind of bring in some stuff you might have missed, because sometimes your points, like in my head, it totally makes sense. That's why I'm not the best person at telling jokes, because it makes sense in my head and I forget to tell a key point. It's like, oh, wait, you didn't know that part. So yeah, it's that writing it down and then rereading it, and then sometimes having your friends or other novel aficionados, I guess you could say, read it. I have a nice writing group here in Rochester. We're the Rochester Fantastical Women, and we all support each other in kind of reading our stuff and critiquing and helping us bring out some of the better aspects, or you should focus on this, maybe, develop this part. So it's that long process, and that's when I hand it off, at least for my Avalon novels, to my editors after that point. And then they start helping me bring out more stuff. So I'm really excited about this next novel, because she really helped me bring out more into the story that I didn't expect. And that was really exciting for me to kind of explore different avenues that someone else was like, I'd really like to know more about this, or explore this more. And it really helped me dive into my characters more, and I'm pretty excited about it. So, yeah.
That's great. Just kind of hearing that whole process, because there's a lot that goes into it. I think a lot of, and maybe there are a number of people that wanted to write a book or wanted to, and it's just some people have tried and not gotten there. Other people have tried and maybe it didn't work out too well, but everyone has their own process.
I think the key is perseverance. And there's this VeggieTales that, as you know, my son was a huge VeggieTales fan. And it's a perseverance episode. And it's about this group who has to carry a piano up a stairs. And it just is that you just got to keep going. It's hard. But the end product is going to be amazing, when you get there. So you just have to keep reminding yourself, perseverance. I can do this, because you can do it. If you can get lost in your novel, which sometimes happens during Nano, it's the most amazing feeling. And I believe a lot of people can do it. They just got to keep a little bit at a time sometimes. Even if it's just like a couple paragraphs, just keep those juices flowing in your mind and you'll get there. So
I know you've gone to a number of different, shows and places where you've been with other small authors. Mm-hmm. How have you connected with them to find even more support and strength? Because I know it's kind of like a community, right? Where you're all supporting each other.
Yeah. I've met a few really great people at some events. I've gone to a lot in Minneapolis, which kind of has a bigger community versus my local Rochester. I was at one of the, again, I call it a NerdCon because I can't think of the specific name. Nerd and Out Con. That's what it was. So I was at that here, and I've been to a few like Art on the Avs and the Thursdays on First that Rochester has. And that helps get you into some of the other Rochester authors that I didn't know, which was very nice. But then in Minneapolis, some of those events, like I've been to the Twin Cities Book Festival, which is so exciting. And you usually make friends with the people around you and you kind of swap stories and you listen to how they pitch their book. So one person next to me was saying, yeah, my book is a combination of like Indiana Jones and Goonies. And people get that. They're like, oh, I love those. So yeah, I want to get that book. So you learn those different tricks or how they're doing and where they're going. And I've met some really great people. I have a few people that I regularly communicate with on Twitter and even a little bit on Facebook. And I've met a few other authors, one on Goodreads. She writes Ancient Mayan, and we connected as she had read, I had reviewed her books, and I gave her a lot of praise because I was like, I usually don't read about the ancient Mayan culture because there's a lot of bloodletting. It's a little more brutal than I'm used to. But she did a great job just bringing that to life. And so she connected with me because she's also an indie author. And we've become kind of good friends. We keep swapping books. So I just sent her my 2 Avalon books to read. And it's nice having that, just having other people understand the process and understand the woes. You know, when you read those reviews and you're like, oh, I'm a total fail. But you're really not. It's just one person's opinion if you get a bad review. And that's what your friends, and they help remind you of that. And they help pick you up when you're feeling down and like, dude, you're an author. Stop being so critical about yourself. Just write and it'll come together. So yeah, it's been great meeting all sorts of other authors, you know, poets, romance authors. I don't write too much romance or poetry. I've always been horrible at poetry. But it's great meeting those people because you just meet all these different creative types, and there are just so many special, wonderful, colorful people out there that I love getting to know through some of these things.
You mentioned social media, so talk about that as a vehicle and a challenge of trying to get information out there when you're an independent author or a small author like that.
Yeah. So I started on Twitter, and
and make sure you give us all your how we can find you. Okay, please do that.
Okay, I'll do that. So I started on Twitter, and I first started with my first book's name, so it was Otten's Last Queen. And then I was like, well, now I'm writing another one, so I had to change that because you have to know how to brand yourself. So you want to create a brand in which people are attracted to. So I'm trying to attract people who love ancient Egypt, and there are a lot of people out there. So a lot of my posts, I try and post some things about discoveries on ancient Egypt. I get the Archaeology magazine, and it's usually has a few Egypt novels that I like. Few Egypt articles, that I like to read, and I'll post links to. And then I started on Facebook. You know, I got my author page, and then on Instagram. So now I'm all kind of branded. I'm usually at J. Lynn Else Author. So come find me. So that on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I am Tea Sippin' Nerdy Mom. There's no G there. It's 2 N's. Tea Sippin' Nerdy Mom. And I also have my own website, teasippin'nerdymom.com. And I try and keep some of my information on my books, and I link to other authors and some advice that I've gotten. And also I try and talk about some cool history stuff because I am a big fan of history. It kind of started with the Titanic. When we were younger, the Titanic was found. Mm-hmm. And I have an uncle who's into maritime history, so he started sending me books on the Titanic, and that really got me interested in history. I'm like, whoa, look at how cool it was back then. All these fancy, how they lived on these ships and they traveled across, and they weren't scared. They didn't have technology like we did. They couldn't just text someone and be like, hey, how you doing? I'm still alive. No icebergs yet. So it was just so fascinating to me. So that kind of got me into history, and then I kept going further and further back eventually. But yeah, I forgot what our original conversation was about. Sorry about that. I hope I answered your question. Oh, no, social media.
Yeah, social media. That's all right. You pretty much covered it.
Okay, good.
And you got the main point, which is telling people how to find you on social media.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the big part. When you, one thing I wanted to ask you was, okay, you talked just before about, you said someone described their books and you listen to how they pitch their books about, this is like Indiana Jones meets Goonie. What would you say, what can you say to have people relate to your books?
I've been thinking about that.
Yeah. Got any good ones yet? If not, we'll put pause in them. We'll get it later.
Okay, let's see. Because I remember talking about it, and it's not quite Lord of the Rings, because as my son said, it's not epic enough. But we're getting there.
Oh, those kids are so
they're so brutally honest.
Yeah, it's great.
So it's kind of that Percy Jackson meets it's kind of J.R.R. Tolkien stuff, but it's got a lot more action. I guess kind of the Mists of Avalon, where you get some of those main characters coming out, some of the magic of that. So, but because I have that history twist, so kind of Percy Jackson, kind of Lord of the Rings, kind of Artemis Fowl, things of that, kind of that area. I think I'm losing people on Artemis Fowl, but that's a really good book too.
You lost me a little bit, but that's okay. Other people might get it. They'd be like, oh, wow.
I'll think about it. I'm still working on that pitch.
All right. That's good. What about as an author? What about people's way of consuming information these days? Why do you think books have made kind of a resurgence?
Well, I love that they've made a resurgence, first of all, because as you've been to my house, you know I have a bazillion books, which is...
I mean, you never stopped. Okay, you had the books, but...
Yes.
Yeah, okay, but other people, it seems like more and more people are reading books, right?
They are, yeah. And I'm not sure what... I think it's that no screen time. I think a lot of parents are trying to get away from screens, and we're trying to get away from screens, because I find that I'm a happier person if I'm not on Facebook as much, because there's a way you perceive other people on Facebook. And so it's very easy to compare what's going on inside you to what everyone posts on Facebook, which is completely different. You know, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on inside their lives too, but you don't see that. So I think trying to get away from some of that has really helped bring the books back. And there's just that tactile, really fun sensation of seeing your progress. And we have things like fidget cubes and fidget spinners. And I don't know if that helps with some of that tactile, that sensation, that there's just that satisfaction of holding a book and seeing it and the cover design and just having that in your hand. I know for myself, when I first published, I couldn't afford to get paperback copies because I went through BookBaby, and you have to have like a minimum amount. So I just had the ebooks. When I switched to Amazon, because I needed to make a few updates and I wanted to kind of hint at my next book, I went to Amazon and I ordered my books, and it was so cool. I could put it up right next to J.K. Rowling and be like, woo, I'm so cool. So I think there's just that we're trying to get away from the screens. They give us headaches, and books are just so much more satisfying in my mind. So,
well, I think it's good too. And I think anyone that's been on devices long enough, you kind of get to that point where you're agitated. There are other I mean, there's just a lot of too much, and people reach that limit, and it's a good escape and step back from it. When you have all of these books now that you've written, okay, you've accomplished some great things.
Yeah.
Where are we going from here?
Where are we going?
Yeah.
Okay, so I do have a couple novels I'm working on. I'm working on a ancient Egypt fantasy, which is set during the time of maybe some of the Egyptian gods. I don't want to call it Gods of Egypt because there's that horrible movie that I don't even want people to think of when they think of my books. But I have a very fierce female goddess who's going to kind of be the one who's trying to take over the world again. And she's going to use some humans who are at the time building the pyramids, try and use them to help accomplish her goals. So I'll just tell you that for now. Right now, the working title is The Goddess of Slaughter. Don't worry, there's not going to be all that much slaughtering, but okay. I just wanted to sound like really fierce.
Okay.
I'm also working on a sequel for my novella, my sci-fi one. It's kind of about a society that, and you know, it's just that stuff you start seeing in society that sci-fi was really good at kind of hinting at. It's a society that no longer touches, but some of their, well, I can't give away too much yet, so
no,
I can't say.
That's okay.
But so
little tease.
These
good.
Groups, they go to this planet to kind of refresh, refuel, and some of their people get captured and they don't know why. And they're in this society where everyone lives in this bubble. So that way nobody can touch each other. And if you do happen to cause an accident, it's kind of like an eye for an eye. If you cause this accident, you need to give something in return. So that's kind of where I'm going. It's still very early, but mostly I'm focusing on that. Reworking my Ancient Egypt one, and then I'm also working on book 3 in my Avalon series, which is going to include some genies. So got some villains coming into Avalon, and they're going on a whole other quest right after my second book. So lots of adventures happening. All right. Yeah.
Well, that all sounds really exciting.
I hope so.
Okay, so tell everyone, where can they find your books?
So
and purchase them, of course.
You can purchase them at any major local online retailer, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. You can look me up, Lynn Else, spelled just like the word or else, what else, whatever. But yeah, they can be purchased at any online retailer. You can also check out my publisher, inklingspublishing.com. They also have my 2 books, and they have a little bit about, kind of when stuff is coming out. So my next book should be out the end of this month, barring anything. We've been working on a map because I love book maps. I don't know why. I just love seeing a map of these fantasy worlds. So we're working on my map, and then we're getting everything formatted, and I just got the dedication and the acknowledgments to them. So should be out the end of this month. And if you want to know when stuff's coming out or what I'm working on, check out my website, tsipinnerdymom.com.
Wow.
Got it?
You got it. That's awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for telling us all about what you're doing in the author world, works that you're contributing to our society, and where people can find them. So I think it's really cool what you're doing, and I think it's very cool about your process and kind of sharing all that with people and the real, behind the scenes kind of look at what it really takes to be an author.
A lot of perseverance, and just know you're not going to get rich. It's just a passion. It brings me joy. And so thank you. I love being able to share this with people. And I love to also share my love of reading. So keep reading, get your books. And thanks so much for your time.
I think what you've done so far is wonderful. And I think it's interesting for people to experience all those things and learn some stuff. Like you said, some historical things.
You can slip that in. It's always good. And if you read it and you like it, there are links to contact me. So I'd love to hear from you. So
very cool. We'll try to send me those links, and we'll try to get them on the video as well.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks so much, Lynn Else.
Thank
author
you.
And mom and wife
So
and all
many
kinds
things.
of things. All these wonderful things, doing great things in Minnesota.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.